Now we're going to test the next component, which will be header component. It is called the header, and as we can see, it consists of two other components, the logo and the header progress. And this is what we're going to test, that the header component is supposed to contain those other components. So first of all, as always, we're going to create new test file to test the header component. Right here I'm going to leave only one testing scenario. We'll only have one test in here. And then I'm gonna render the header component by using shallow mount function. Then let's see what markup we're going to get after rendering this component. And also let's take a look at the implementation of this component. Let's open up the header.vue file. As we can see right here, this component has two other components, just like we have seen in Vue DevTools before. But just because we have used shallow mount function to render this component in our test, we're seeing that those two other components have been replaced with stubs. And that is actually fine to make sure that these components will be present inside header component. And to test the presence, I'm going to write the following expectation. First of all, we have to find the component by its name. I'm gonna use findComponent method, which takes a component that we have to find, and then by calling method exist, we are making sure that this component has actually been found. So let's compare the value we are getting out of this method call with true like this. And the same expectation I'm going to write to find another component with the name the header progress. And the test is passing, but the moment we're going to remove either of those components from here, we will notice that test will fail. Let's also try to remove another component and make sure that test will fail as well. It is failing, so it's good. We can move on to the next component. But before, let's just run all tests in the project. Everything is fine, so we can move on to the next component, which will be navigation. The component responsible for rendering navigation is called the now, which consists of three now item components. So to test this component, I'm going to create only one testing scenario. Let's create new file, the now.test.ts. In here, let's leave one test. Rename the description of this test. It will say it has all now items. So we're going to make sure that the navigation has all expected now items. There should be 3 now items, as we have seen in the browser. As always, the first step will be to mount this component. Let's use shallow mount function for this. And check what rendered markup is going to look like in the terminal. Let's also take a look at the implementation of the now component. Right here we're seeing that we're using v-for loop, which renders now items. And all data for now items comes from this now items array, which gets imported from the constants module. So I'm going to copy over this import of now items constant in the test, because we're going to use loop to loop over all now items. And then by using method find all components on the wrapper object, we're going to search for a particular now item component by its index. And then by referencing property called VM, which will be a Vue component instance, we can get access to props on this component. So as you can see inside the now component, we're passing only one prop to this now item component called now item, which receives one of the now item objects from now items array. And since we already have access to this now item object at every loop iteration, let's check that this now item prop on Vue component will actually point to now item object from now items array. So basically in our test we're doing the same thing, iterating over now items array and rendering now item components for every now item object, just like it is done inside the now component. As you can see, this test is passing and we are seeing 3 now item components have been rendered inside the now component. Even though they are rendered as stubs in here, but for our testing scenario it is enough. we don't have to fully render those nowItem components because we are only checking the presence of those components inside the now component. And for example, if we'll forget to pass nowItem prop to nowItem component, I'm gonna remove it from here. We'll see test is going to fail, just like we expect. So let's get back this prop, remove this console log statement from the test, and run all tests in the project. Link to the source code of this project will be in the video description.